Listening to podcasts is no replacement for real training. While we attempt to provide accurate commentary, we hold no responsibility on how you use the information we provide. Get medical training. In the blink of an eye, everyday order can be replaced with once-in-a-lifetime chaos. Be prepared. This is the Civilian Medical Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Civilian Medical Podcast. My name is Dietrich, Skinny Medic on YouTube. We have two Skinny Medics and a Sean today on this episode, so pretty excited to have someone new. This is Sam. He's our first guest on Civilian Medical Podcast, so pretty excited. You don't get a trophy or anything like that, Sam, but pretty excited to have you on the episode.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is awesome. I do feel a little bit outnumbered. It's like, like 1 out of 3 people has diabetes. I guess we know who has it in this group. So Sam, I mean, we'll get right into it. We're super glad to have you. I actually subscribed to your channel and watched the videos that you put out. Some great stuff. You've been growing really fast. What is your background?
So my background's pretty honed into EMS. I've been a paramedic for the last 8 years. Just moved out to Colorado to a larger system from Iowa, actually. Spent the last couple years as a SWAT medic on a small rural team in Iowa. Done a lot of the tactical stuff, and then really into some instruction and education in EMS as well.
Awesome. So do you have any like military background, or you just went straight into EMS?
No military background. I went right into ski patrol out of high school, and then into my EMT and paramedic pretty shortly after that. So I've pretty much been doing exclusively EMS for a long time.
Cool. That's my background too. Same thing. Like I got out of high school, got my EMT, and went to work for a larger service, and kind of just fell into the trauma side of stuff. And it was funny. Like I remember when the cat tourniquets were first coming on, and I was like, "God, this is crazy! Like, what are tourniquets doing?" And now, like, I'm all about tourniquets. So, kind of how it comes full circle. So, pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember in paramedic school, like a lot of the trauma stuff we're teaching now wasn't even taught to me. A lot of that was stuff I learned after the fact. With tourniquets and wound packing and things like that.
So you got into it like right after school. Was it something that you wanted to do, or like what was the defining factor that really just, medical is going to be what I'm going to do?
It's kind of a funny story, but I was horrible in high school. I was a horrible student. Not horrible, but I was getting, C's and D's and almost everything. I was looking for something that had, that I could be proud of, that I could like tell people and, be excited about what I was doing, that had some practical skill and some relation to the real world. And I really found that EMS is a great bridge between, that blue collar work group. You got that mentality, but you have like kind of a white collar clout to it as well. You're in the medical field, but I tell people, EMS is kind of the jocks of the medical field. You get to do a lot of cool stuff.
That makes a lot of sense. That is pretty awesome. You said you came from a smaller system and now into a bigger system. What are some of the biggest changes that you kind of expect to see?
Just the calls are the same. You run, I think, the same amount of, ratios of different kinds of calls, but it just being in a system as opposed to a smaller group. I went from having, 3 rigs to, a system that has, up to 20 on at the same time. So, just having that system management, in Iowa, we'd have, a car wreck with 4 patients, and we'd pile all 4 patients into one ambulance because that's all you had. And here, you'll call unlimited resources all day long. So it's a little different, and then transport times are different, but, EMS, I think, is pretty much, the same no matter where you go in the country. You get the same calls, the same kinds of people, you work with the same people. I think the personalities are kind of cloned over every agency. So it's interesting, but a lot of it's the same.
That's funny. Like we've we had the opposite side of that. Like I was at a larger service who at peak times was running 20 something calls, and now I work part time for a service who has 9 trucks. So like we flip flop there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Like every service has the same amount of people. Like you have the guy who's like salty, who's ticked off at everything. You always have that guy who talks too much on the radio, who tells you exactly what's going on. So you have the same people, just different worlds.
Are you the salty guy, Dietrich?
Yes, I am absolutely the salty guy. So yeah, like when I worked full time, I was absolutely the salty guy. Like, I worked night shift. Like I was inner city, so it kind of had that same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Like this is stupid. But now that I'm part time, like I love EMS. Like I'm like, all right, your toe hurts. Let's go to the hospital. Which hospital would you like to go to? Oh, you want to go to that one who's 45 minutes away? Let's go. And like, because I'm not going to do this for another month. Let's do it.
Yep.
Awesome. What are some of the craziest scenes that you've been on? Just like the scenario. What was the scenario?
About 2 years ago, we had a snowstorm. It wasn't particularly bad in Iowa, but for some reason the stars aligned. We had a 70 car pileup, and we knew nothing of it going into it. We thought it was a leg injury, and we got on scene and it was like absolute Armageddon. We've got, I think, 4 ALS ambulances in the entire county. So, you're looking at 80 square miles of, you're it, and you don't have that many resources. Okay. So that for me was just a cluster.
How do you even triage that or decide who to treat? And how do you take care of scene safety and something like that?
With that one, scene safety was the wrecked semis that were across the entire road. So nobody was getting to you once you were in there. But triage, I don't know how you guys feel, and Dietrich, I don't know how you feel about it, but with the triage tags, I think that's going out. I don't think that's something that we're going to see much more in EMS, because for us, it was a mile of Armageddon, and we just walked down and we had a gaggle of firefighters following us like baby geese. And we'd just say, all right, this person, stay with this person doesn't need to go, and load them up on ambulances. We got to them. It wasn't like, we've got 5 reds or anything like that.
Yeah, nobody I recently did an evaluation on an active shooter for a large university here in South Carolina. I don't want to name them, but it was a large university in South Carolina. They were doing active shooter. They have tons of money, and not one triage tag was used during the casualty collection point or anything like that. And I do think they're going away. They're complicated to use. Nobody remembers to use them. Nobody pulls them off the truck. Nobody has a Sharpie. So our system has went to using ribbons. There again, I think that's kind of nobody really does that either. So yeah, I think there needs to be a way that we can universally. There's got to be something easier that can be done for triaging, especially like active shooter, active assailants. That's the big key terms right now everybody's thinking about. So how do you triage people quickly and effectively, and how do you not double, triple triage the same patient, and how do you notify that this room is clear? So there's a lot of things going on that could be improved in triage.
Makes a lot of sense. So then, go ahead, Sam.
Oh no, I was just gonna say with that, if you take too much time in EMS, as we saw in the Las Vegas shooting, if you take too much time and we're staging and we're taking our time doing triage, people are gonna take it into their own hands. And they're going to load people in pickup trucks, and they're going to take them to whatever, service is closest, which we all know isn't the best thing, is they might be taking them to a level 4 trauma center that can't handle them. And nobody really knows the difference outside of EMS. So, we have to be fast. And I don't think that stage and wait and that, triage and hold people there is really a viable option anymore.
Makes a lot of sense. So you're doing this, you're doing the medical stuff, you're out there, and then you decided to start a YouTube channel. Tell us that story.
So, I have been doing video stuff for a long time, just, casually on the side. I really like making, video edits with, music on top of them, skiing and, doing things like that. But it really had no meaning, and there was no purpose to do it besides just my own enjoyment. So I was sitting, I had ran a really cool call. I was thinking man, this job is awesome. And at the same time, we had no applicants. We had a position open, and we had like 2 applicants that were very clearly not suited for the job. And I'm, thinking like, why is that the case? Why do we have nobody entering this field? I mean, we get to do really cool things. We're doing, intubations, cricothyrotomies, giving a plethora of meds. We have autonomy. And despite what some people say, you don't get paid well everywhere, but if you find the right service, you can make, I think, a decent living in EMS. So, I sitting there thinking like, why is that a problem? And it's because we've got a lot of silent professionals. We got a lot of people that aren't, out there bragging about what they do. And I think that's great. But at the same time, nursing and everything like that is advertising all the time. They've got videos, they've got, all these like Littman's putting out videos of them doing cool stuff. So I thought, this is a good way to get into this. This is a way to get people interested in it, show people how cool this job is. And then at the same time, what's saving lives for people is bystander intervention. Most of the time, your CPR, your bleeding control, your airway control, like all of that, if a bystander correctly identifies those issues and can intervene, they're going to make all the difference in the world for that patient. I've never had a cardiac arrest save that was not witnessed by somebody and they started CPR. So I felt, I felt like YouTube was like this way to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Let's show people how cool this profession can be, and let's empower bystanders to, act on behalf of patients and act correctly, and, start these interventions.
Makes a lot of sense. Would you say that, do you see the civilian interest in medical growing like we do?
I think absolutely. I went in a year, I went from, 0 subscribers to, over 80,000 and climbing. And I think if that's not a good metric of the interest in civilian medical preparedness, I don't know what is a metric, because, to me, that seems like there's a big interest out there. I was listening to one of your past shows, and, you were talking about how more and more people carrying guns are carrying medical kits. And I think that's super important, because, if, you're probably not going to draw your gun, but we are all going to have a situation where we have to use a medical kit at some point in our lives. So, that to me is huge.
Yeah. In firearms class, in tons of classes, I'm always like, who here has pointed a gun at another human being because they thought that they were going to hurt them? And like maybe 1 hand ever has gone up. And then who here has seen someone be injured and didn't know what to do? And like 90% of the hands go up. And it's ridiculous. And I agree. It's really, really important. And I mean, Skinny Medic, I think, and not to pump your ego here, Dietrich, but like that, you've been around for a long time. You've really been pushing this stuff, and you've had really, really solid growth in people that are really interested in it. And, wherever I go in the country, people know Skinny Medic. And I think that's awesome. And you've been a huge part of that, I don't know, growing interest, I think.
Definitely. I mean, we've been plugging along our channel for a while now, and like we're into that. The prepper survival, like we kind of moved into that, and then the firearms community just totally sucked us in and accepted us. That's what I'm like. It's crazy, to go to these YouTube shoots where all these big YouTube gun channels are there, and we're not a gun channel, but we totally got accepted in. And even the companies that we were with, like we talked about, Facts and Firearms, like those guys completely accepted us in. It's because my wife, but hey, whatever. They completely took her in and said, hey, what do you want? And we'll want to help you on your next build. So, but there again, more and more, like the first time we went to NRA show wasn't really the big of a deal. And like every year they're starting to grow. Like guys are talking about, hey, I started wearing an IFACT. I started wearing an ankle kit now. And then this year, like there's a tourniquet war in the middle of the NRA show. Like we're doing tourniquets, like showing people. And even, we mentioned last week, Sean, he was on a group of people, the guys were talking. And there was 3 questions asked about medical. So I think it's growing. I'm excited. Like you said, I've never had to point a firearm at someone because I thought my life was in danger. But I've done plenty of pull over on the side of the road for a wreck, or someone's having some kind of emergency, and done that. So definitely able to use it. And I think people are going to know who PrepMedic is now, because he is fixing to pass me. I feel like I'm running like 65 on pit road, and he's like running 200 across Indianapolis and 500. He's gonna go right past me. So
Wow,
we're gonna get our play buttons at the same time. Like, this is ridiculous. Who's this kid?
you sound bitter. You sound so bitter, man.
I'm a little bitter. I'm not gonna lie. Like, this guy just come out of nowhere. He's gonna pass me. Like, I'm running. I've got it in like second gear on pit lane, and like this guy's gonna smoke past me. So,
well, Dietrich, if it makes you feel any better, you were one of the YouTubers I've been watching since I started, EMS and all of that stuff. I was like, well, hey, this guy's got a following. He does medical stuff. I like what he's doing. So, regardless of that passing, which I would be lying if I said I wasn't, hoping for a little bit, but that was a big inspiration for me to start that as well. Of just watching what you were doing and seeing the positive feedback, from your followers.
man, you make me feel old. Like, you're talking to the old guy. You're like, oh yeah, I was this young buck watching your stuff, and all of a sudden I'm gonna kick your ass. Like, so.
I love it.
No, I'm excited for you. And like, when I first started doing the medical on YouTube, nobody was out there doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
And now to see, and there were people doing it, but not doing it well. I'll say that. Like, there was some really crappy information going out. So that's when, a couple of guys were like, hey, you need to start a YouTube channel. So we started it just to provide good information that we could provide. And so no, I'm super excited to support you. And so we've supported you with the affiliate link on your channel and have you on here. So someone who's putting out good quality information, whether it be from civilian side or be from, the educational side for EMS people. Absolutely. If I can get behind you and push, then I'll do whatever I can do to help you.
No, absolutely. And, the other thing I think is important is, and what I like telling people is that there's no like one answer. I have a different opinion on things than you. And I think the more people that are doing this, the better. It would be easy to look at it as competition and things like that. But beyond the friendly ribbing and the friendly competition, the more medical people we can get on YouTube, I think the better. And the more information we can get out there, because I've definitely said wrong things in videos, and that will not change. We all make mistakes there. And I think the more information and the more sources of information you can get, the better. Nobody should be exclusively listening to me or you or anything. There has to be a plethora of educational opportunities for them.
Yeah, I've never done anything wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never said anything wrong. Never.
Oh, I have. Actually, we did do something wrong. I was trying to remember what it was. We were talking about diabetes and we said ketosis, but what we meant was ketoacidosis.
Oh, we screwed up?
We did. Yeah. Listener PJ pointed that out and I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right, actually.
My bad. And we also got in trouble for the tourniquet crap, like circumference and diameter. Apparently there's a difference there.
All right. That's just being pedantic.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, people. You know what we're talking about. Like, you guys are killing me.
It's good stuff. I mean, tell us about this super awesome YouTube channel that you have. What's your favorite video that you've done?
Favorite videos. I really enjoy every video I put out. It's one of those things where, you put so much work into it. And if you put it out, I've had a couple I've put them out and I haven't been proud of, and I've like taken them down and put something else up because, at the end of the day, I really like, going through this stuff. I love gear personally. So I love like showing people, hey, look I just got this new toy. I got this new thing that I'm really stoked about. So I like going through my gear. I like showing people what I'm carrying because I think that one, it gives people an idea of what they could be using, and two, blatantly showing off.
What's the hardest video that you've done that got the least response or the most unexpected poor response?
I like throwing in those medical videos. I know Skinny Medic, you're doing those videos as well, where you're kind of looking at injuries or like body systems and how you treat it, doing your after action medical reports. But, like I did one on like burns and, abdominal trauma. And for each of those, even though I'm paramedic and doing it a long time, I like go back through textbooks and look up new sources to make sure I'm putting out the best information possible. But honestly, those videos get the least amount of views of anything I put out.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like I've tried to do a couple like medical, like, all right, if someone's having chest pain, these are some things you can look at doing, and you kind of, talking about aspirin, and kind of going through that nausea, vomiting, kind of different types of chest pain. and thought it was a great video, and it bombed. And like I've done stroke videos, and like it bombed. I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna stick to doing tourniquets. Like this is what you guys want. I'm just gonna stick.
Well, it's because it's not sexy. Like if you gave them tactical black aspirin, it would be totally fine.
And put some Molly on it. We could charge 10% more. It'd be awesome.
Yep. Sam, I have a question, and I mean this with clearly with all respect. You did a video how to do needle thoracostomy or a chest needle decompression. Now, it's a good video. I have watched it. Do you think that providing that kind of knowledge to the average everyday person, or what are your opinions on providing that knowledge to the average everyday person?
You know, I'm mixed about it. You know, I think that knowledge, no matter what your certification level, I don't think having the knowledge will ever hurt. You know, I think understanding something will never hurt. I don't think that an everyday Joe should be walking around with an ARS needle doing decompressions. And that being said, you know, somebody that's in medic school, somebody that's, you know, just really curious about something that happened to them or a family member, I think that knowledge is power for them. I also think that, you know, there are people out there, there are paramedics, there are very good paramedics and professionals that's a low frequency skill. That's not something we do very often. And I think having that refresher is an important thing, and being able to go on YouTube and find, you know, information on it. Now, I will say one thing about that video. We were talking about never making mistakes. That was one of my first like big mistakes on YouTube. Is the one thing I say that I wish I could take back in that video is putting the needle all the way to the hub in the space. Now, generally that's what happens because you don't hear the air and you can't really feel that sensation of it going through. Yeah, the pop going through the pleural space. But really the correct answer for that is you're putting it in about 3 centimeters and you're waiting to hear that whoosh of air coming out of it. So to clarify for my followers on that video, yes, I made a mistake. And but to get back to your question, I think it's important to know. I just hope that people on the internet have enough intelligence to not be going around sticking needles into people's chests without appropriate training.
No, man, I'm 100% with you. I'm like, I think that having that information out there is incredibly important. Dietrich, what are your thoughts on this?
I agree. I mean, I have a video similar to it on how to do it. I made this mistake as there about placement. I think it's between second and third intercostal, and I don't remember what I said, but there was some kind of error. So my video has an error too. So I agree. And even in my classes, like I teach the civilian medical class, and I talk about it. I show them the needle. I talk about placement. I give them, you know, why EMS is going to do it. But at the same time, I'm like, if you're at dinner and you go to stab somebody in the chest, that's a problem. Now, if it's your husband, wife, brother, whatever, that's your call. But at the same time, if you're on the way home and you're down the interstate and you're like, oh, I think this guy has a tension pneumothorax, and you stab him in the chest, that's a problem. You're going to need to answer for that. So there again, I agree. Same thing. Providing that education.
Yep.
But at the same time, knowing that the liability is there to have problems with.
Yeah, but I do love having the information out there. You know, one thing you don't see is very many cricothyroidotomy videos.
Yeah, I've never done one in the field. Like I've done plenty in training, but never had the opportunity to do one in the field. And you were talking about the rush of air, Sam. I've done a bunch, and I was a field training officer. So when I was doing field training officer, I would just give them up and like, all right, I've done plenty. I've never heard the rush of air, to be completely honest with you. So like, I always stab it to the hub.
Yeah, me neither. You know, I think the one device that I have never used it, or I've not used it yet. My service doesn't carry them. I'm working on them. But the Spear that North American Rescue just came out with, that little whistling hub at the end that's supposed to kind of tell you, it's the indicator when it goes in. Mm-hmm. And it has the depth markers on it. I'll be interested to see if that changes it, because the whoosh of air, I think, is kind of a falsehood. I think they teach you that but you know, in reality, a trauma scene or in the back of a rig, you're never going to hear that.
No, I'm too deaf to hear anything now. So
dang guns.
It was that, and I was stupid and thought it was cool to ride around the windows rolled down with a siren blaring because you thought you were a freaking hero riding around. Like now you realize you're just an ambulance driver. But you know, that siren, like being between guns and the siren, I can't hear crap.
Skinny, you want to take that next question?
I wasn't paying attention to it, to be honest with you. What's the next question? What would you give advice to civilians? So, knowing that our group listening to this podcast are mostly civilians that are either gun guys or they want to be more interested, what advice would you give them, Sam?
I would say, focus on the life-saving skills, the things that are going to stop preventable death. We preach so much about tourniquets and wound packing and airway and CPR. And that's not because those are the most common things we're going to be doing, but that's because they're the most common things that we're going to be doing that are going to make a substantial difference for people. So like there's a ton of stuff you can learn about other trauma and things like that. But I would say, focus on those things because that's what you can make a difference with. There's a lot of treatments that we're going to do in the ambulance that we have a lot more. We have a lot more training. We have a lot more tools at our disposal, and same goes for the ER. But really, truly, it all comes back to the basics. It comes back to identifying life-threatening bleed, stopping the life-threatening bleed, identifying cardiac arrest, starting CPR, and applying an AED. Everything else is in the civilian world, I think, is a lot of fluff that you can make somebody more comfortable, but you're not necessarily going to, make a huge difference for them, like in terms of life or death.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important because the stuff that we as civilians can do, it's usually binary. Did this work? If yes, move on. If not, keep doing it until it does work, kind of thing. But then it is that massive bleed stuff. But when you look at NCBI, I think did a report that was wounding profiles in mass shootings, and it's all like head injuries and chest injuries and injuries in that pleural space, penetrating trauma to the chest and things like that, which we can do less about than anything else. So like I think that the tourniquets and the stop the bleed and everything else is super important, but also as civilians we have to constantly be like, when mass shootings happen, people are dying from trauma to the chest and the head, even though that's the thing we can do the least amount about. But I think that's incredibly important to keep in mind for all of us.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to understand that it's not like with this kind of thing, it's not the most common thing you're going to see. In a shooting, you're going to see more people that have wounds to their abdomen, thorax, all of that in their head than you are going to see like exsanguinating extremity trauma. The thing why we're preaching that is just because it's what's going to make a difference for them. So we can't always do something about it. Even in the ambulance, if somebody doesn't have a pulse after a traumatic injury, I mean, their chances of survival, I think, are in the like 0.01% range. There's not a whole lot we can do unless you're a trauma surgeon and you've got a trauma suite at your disposal.
Yeah, I'm going to read the stats just real quick, just so people can hear it. This is one report. It's done by E.R. Smith and G. Shapiro and B. Sarani. It's called The Profile of Wounding and Civilian Public Mass Shooting Fatalities. It said 139 fatalities consisting of 371 wounds from 12 events, and 58% of victims had gunshots to the head and chest. 20% had extremity wounds. The probable site of fatal wounding was the head or chest in 77% of the cases. Only 7% of victims had potentially survivable wounds. And the most common site of potentially survivable injury was the chest, 89%. Just, something to keep in mind for all of us. Just a reality check, I think. And you said it really well.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree 100%. And so Sam, thinking about like civilian side, one of the last episodes that Sean and I did, we talked about building a trauma kit, and we've been through the March algorithm. So we went through and we recommended items across the board for building a trauma kit to cover that March algorithm, cover, like you were just saying, the massive bleeding, the chest seals, things like that. So I know you've done a couple of videos on building home kits and vehicle kits, and they've been really well. I've watched them. You did a great job on them. So kind of like to our listeners, thinking about some ideas, like if someone wants to build a vehicle kit or a kit to put in their home, what are some ideas you have?
And thank you. I like those videos, and I have opinions of what should be in there, but I think the first thing you have to consider is what are you trained to do? What can you actually act on? Because I have seen, and I'd be interested to know your take on this. I've seen a lot of people say like, well, I'm going to carry these IV supplies and this cricothyrotomy kit and all these other like advanced things, not because I can do them, but because there might be like a physician on the road that might want to do it. I don't personally agree with that because I think it's taking up space and making clutter in a kit of things that you can do. But I think the first thing is to look at what you're trained to do and start building from there. Like your base supplies, you start with your tourniquet, you start with your compact gauze, something to pack junctional wounds, chest seals, and pressure bandages, and then a CPR mask. If I ever forget a CPR mask in a video, people freak out. But
You don't do mouth to mouth to people?
Yeah, I would never. I would, like, unless it's a family member, I would not do mouth to mouth. Mainly because CPR, hands only CPR, is really the way to go, I think, when you're by yourself, if you're doing CPR on somebody. But
mine always depends on what she looks like. If like Ivanka Trump needs mouth to mouth, like I'll do, like somebody's got to do mouth to mouth to Ivanka Trump. Something happened, but other than that, yeah, I 100% agree.
They'll be like, Skinny Medic, you don't use tongue.
Not sure how that's saving a life, but okay.
He does like to wrestle.
I'll take her dinner afterwards, God.
Yeah. Because we have so many very fit people going into cardiac arrest. It's super common.
Exactly. It's all like beer and pizza coming up and stuff like that. So. But yeah, I agree 100%. Hands only CPR is the way to do it. I'm gonna rock out CPR hands only until help gets there. So, yeah, I see guys putting CPR mask in like their trauma kits and stuff like that, and I agree that's probably taking up space. I have a CPR mask that stays in my truck for someone if there's airway involvement, like a choking patient or there's a drowning. Then that's why they went into cardiac arrest. They need some ventilations, but there is no CPR shield in my SWAT gear. There's no CPR shield in my IFAC for my gun bag. So no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, and I will say that I had an experience when I was living in Madison. I was like walking downtown, and there was a guy like sitting on the side of the road, blue in the face, heroin overdose, and in that case, like obviously we don't need to do CPR on him yet. He's got a pulse. But in that case, I had a CPR shield on me, and I was able to do rescue breaths for him and, keep him alive for the, 5 minutes or so it took for the ambulance to get there. So not saying there isn't a use for it. And, heroin and opiate issues are on the rise. So for like those respiratory arrest cases, it can be good, but I wouldn't say it's like your primary thing. You need to make sure it's in your kit.
So do you think civilians should be carrying Narcan?
I do not. I maybe if you're in a really high heroin area and you're trained in it, sure. A paramedic and EMT off duty, I could see the argument for it, but because its half-life is so much shorter than heroin is, you're going to give somebody Narcan, you're going to have no like police or law enforcement or EMS support there, and you're going to give them Narcan. They're going to get up and be like, all right, peace, I'm leaving. And they're going to get 5 steps down the road and overdose again. So I think if you can maintain them, or they're going to wake up and fight you. So I think if you can maintain them with rescue breaths, do that, call 911, and then have somebody that has handcuffs, tasers, a gun, and medical restraints and more Narcan, wait for them to get there, and they can do that, wake them up, do what they have to do. But that's my opinion. I could see arguments otherwise.
Man, you want to start a crap storm? Talk about that. I posted in there that civilians didn't need Narcan, that Narcan's overused. It does have some side effects. And that, you should practice your BVM skills, practice getting good chest rise and fall with a BVM. That does take some practice, getting good hand placement, the EC connection, but you can absolutely do it. And man, I said that and you thought I would have beat some kid on the side of the road. Like they were like, blah, blah. I'm like, no, not everybody needs Narcan. Narcan's being overused. We see it in these dash cams of officers self-administering Narcan. Because they're having a panic attack and things like that. And like I granted, Narcan has its place, but I think it's getting way overused, way over publicized right now. So I agree. Like I said, I started a huge crap storm because I said just put a BVM for $20. You can put a BVM in your kit, get some training, get some practice with it. You can practice, and you don't need the Narcan. So I agree 100%.
I am so glad you said that because I was just listening to MCRIT podcast, I think it was. And, we have, like you said, all these videos, and it's so hard to bring information about like this carfentanil and these quote unquote fentanyl exposures that these police officers are having, because people feel like you're calling the officers like a liar or a faker, or, you know, they're just having a panic attack. Like, we have scared our law enforcement to death with the risk of fentanyl. And the reality is you will not overdose from inhaling some dust on scene, or, you know, getting powder on your hands. It's not possible. Even with these fentanyl patches, you could put, I think there was a study on it was like 10 on your hands and leave them on, and you'd get 100 micrograms of fentanyl over the course of hours, which is a normal adult dose. So I think we need to stop that hysteria, because it's costing millions of dollars in hazmat response. Officers are freaking out. Like, officers are seen on dash cams asking for Narcan. If you can ask for Narcan, you do not need Narcan.
Right. Absolutely. Agree 100%. You know, I was on a scene, and wasn't one of our local officers, and he was like, hold on, I got to go get my fentanyl gloves. I was like, I'll play your silly game. Go get your fentanyl gloves. I want to see them. And he goes and he gets our EMS gloves, our same color EMS gloves, out of his car and gets them back on. I was like, what was different than your regular gloves you're just using? He's like, oh, these are my fentanyl gloves. I was like, oh my gosh, bud. And like, I had to have a little heart, like, tried to educate him. I'm like, bud, you could literally stick your bare hands in that powder that we're seeing right here, and you're fine. You're not going to overdose. Like, you're not. It just doesn't happen. I don't know where the hysteria is coming from. Like, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, who is feeding this information?
It's so funny. I literally just like within the last week watched a thing on fentanyl on Vice News, and after that I was like, holy crap, fentanyl is like a big, huge problem that we have. Even though I knew that we didn't. I mean, I realize it's a problem, but they made it seem like it was the craziest, worst thing that has ever happened to the, you know, Western society. And I think it's that kind of stuff.
Well, and if you look at, I think it's the American College of Toxicology, I think has a really good position paper on fentanyl and exposure. And the thing a lot of people don't realize is fentanyl's been in the heroin supply since the 60s. It's been a thing that's been around for a long time, but we are just now having this hysteria. And maybe that's social media, you know, the prevalence of body cams, things like that. But it's important to understand that, like, when you go to the CDC website, they recommend all these precautions. And if you read on their position paper, it says in the first sentence, they're talking about weaponized fentanyl, which is very rare. It's something that is not in the drug supply. And it's something that has only been used once in the theater hostage situation in Russia, where they weaponized this fentanyl, pumped it in, and it like basically killed everybody. That is dangerous, but it's very expensive to produce. You have to break down the molecule super small, and it is not something that our drug dealers or cartels have the capability of doing. And there's no reason for them to do it, because it's expensive and it doesn't help like their drug sell or potency or anything like that.
Awesome. So we have trauma supplies, CPR, some kind of CPR mask. Anything else you kind of say is your go-to items for civilians to need to look at?
You know, beyond that, I think it's comfort items. You know, you have the stuff that's going to save a life, and now look at what have you experienced? That's how I build my kits. It's like, what situations have I come in contact with that I really wish I would have had something? You know, I've had people, you know, ask me for Band-Aids, and I haven't had Band-Aids, so I start, you know, carrying Band-Aids. You know, things like Tylenol, ibuprofen, aspirin. You know, aspirin's good if somebody has chest pain. You know, it'll help them a little bit in that aspect. It's not going to be a huge difference, but it'll do a little bit for them. You know, other meds like that, you know, look at your minor wound care items, because the reality is most of what you're going to see on a daily basis is, you know, somebody skinning their knee or having a headache or, you know, stomach problems. So I think just building it from what you're going to use and really looking at what you've used in the past to build that. But I think as long as you have the base components, that's the big thing. And then kind of look at everything else and build it around what your lifestyle is.
Do you carry tampons?
Okay. So yes, I do, but not, and I repeat, not for wound packing. I carry them because I like, you know, being a good husband, and, you know, nothing endears you to your wife more than having a tampon in a time of need. And amazingly, people like will come up to you, like even on the ambulance, be like, "Hey, do you have a tampon for me?" And you can be, help. You can make their day a little bit better if you have that for them. So I do, but I think you guys have preached about it, and I'm so glad about that. But do not pack wounds with a tampon. Do not do it.
So I told Sean, I think it was last week, I told Sean this story
Yeah.
that we're doing a standby. Another medic and I are standing there. We're all decked out in our Gucci gear and standing there just kind of watching the crowd, no big deal. And this lady comes up and she's like, "I need to ask you a question." I was like, "Okay." And she's whispering and she's like, "Do you have a tampon?" And I was like, "This lady's pulling my leg. Like, where's the camera at? Like, someone is jacking with me." And my buddy starts laughing. He was like, "That's hilarious." And I was like, "No, ma'am, I do not have a tampon." And so we had to go. I found another friend who may have had some. I was like, "Do you have a tampon?" She's like, "I do." I was like, "This lady needs you." But I was like, "Holy cow!" Like, I thought this lady was messing with me. Like, someone's got a camera out. They figured out that I'm skinny medic, and they're trying to see if I'm what I'm going to say here. But yeah, she needed a tampon. I'm like, "All right, maybe I should put a tampon in my gear just to make sure I've got one to save the day for this poor lady."
Absolutely.
I love that. What's your you said that you love gear. Like, what's the gear, whether it's a bag, whether it's an actual adjunct or anything? What's the one thing that you're like, this is the best thing that has ever existed?
And I don't know why I even like bothered having them, because this is a podcast, you can't see them, but I've got like my personal trauma kits. I absolutely love my ankle trauma kit. I carry all the time, in the winter wearing shorts. I've got hyphen chest seal. I carry a soft T wide because it's more compact, and then like some compact gauze. Super easy to put on at the beginning of the day. Just forget about it. And I think I heard you guys use the North American Rescue one. I personally like the Dark Angel Medical ankle kit because it's a little bit, for me, it's a little bit slimmer, and it fits under my pants a little bit better. But I really like the personal trauma kits. In the summer, I just started carrying the Live the Creed pocket trauma kit. I just think it's super cool to have something that's on you. Now, obviously, these aren't comprehensive kits, but you're also not like, if it's too big, you're not going to carry it. If it's not comfortable, you're not going to carry it. So I really like these new innovative personal trauma kits that you can carry every day with you.
Yeah, I agree. I like the North America one. It's comfortable, but it's extra padded, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it does kind of, you really have to make sure you're dressed around it. Sean, we're not can't say anything yet, but we're working with a company that has come out with one. It's really cool. I'm excited about it. As soon as it comes to market, we're going to be pushing it. So we're just waiting on it. So there's some stuff coming.
Awesome.
I'm wearing it right now, in fact.
I am too, actually, but we're on podcast. You can't see our legs.
No. That's awesome. Yeah, I really do like the North American Rescue, but damn, it's thick, like THICC. What are some of the myths that you hear out there, like medical myths that you hear just regurgitated on the internet and social media all the time, and every time you see it, you just want to kind of slap somebody and correct them?
So I don't want to start crap on your podcast on things, because I know there's some controversial things about it. A lot of these companies have really good marketing and really convincing videos, and like things we're all watching. I'll know better. I'll be like, that's super cool. I want to get that. Looking at some of these tourniquets that are supposed to be these new revolutionary devices. So the stat tourniquet and the rats tourniquet both have.
Crap! I'm getting sued now.
I know. The stat, they have their own legal things. I mentioned it in the last video. All I know is Crisis Med did a study on them and found like 22 out of like 25 they were not able to occlude flow. It looks like a really good idea on the surface. I think there might be a concept there that could be improved on. But, and like the rats as well, they've had such good marketing, but at the end of the day, there are so many better tools out there for people to use. So I think these like newfangled devices that have no data to support them are one of the biggest like myths and hard things. Every time you put out a video on a tourniquet, somebody's like, hey, what about X, Y, and Z? And you look on like for studies and there's nothing to support its use, to support its effectiveness. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And there was one that came out at SHOT Show that I have that Oh man, uh, I'm gonna talk about it more. I'm just still collecting data and stuff, but it is so bad. It is the worst tourniquet that I've ever put my hands on, and I have touched the stat tourniquet and the rats, and it's just so bad. But yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that in the coming weeks. But yeah, no, I agree with you. There's a lot of interesting stuff coming out there. And speaking of tourniquets, you just did a video. I know Skinny Medic's done a video. The Committee for TCCC kind of released their new uh, recommendations for tourniquet use and kind of blew the doors off the tourniquet industry, I think. What were your thoughts?
I'm really happy that they finally reevaluated these tourniquets. It was kind of hard to be like, no, stick with your basically two choices, your cats and soft T wides, even though there hadn't been a reevaluation since 2004. So I'm super glad they did that. I'm really glad that there's a larger group of things people can get. I personally will be sticking with the cat tourniquet for most everything and the soft T wide for the thinness of it. But there are advantages to the other tourniquets that I might not even know. The ratcheting tourniquet, somebody brought up that, if you release the ratchet, it doesn't, spin the windlass off and you don't lose all that compression. You can release the tourniquet and go right back to it. It's got a mechanical advantage for people that might have arthritis in their hands or aren't strong enough to turn the windlass. They can, just keep on ratcheting it down. I'm really stoked about all the new innovations they've brought into it. And then Dietrich said on his video, I think every Stop the Bleed instructor on the planet is super excited for the SAM XT with that feedback with the click as it goes down. It's so much easier to teach people.
I agree 100%. That's one of the problems with the cat and a soft T is that people don't pull the strap tight enough before they start turning the windlass. So the audible click lets people know that it's tight enough. So yeah, I'm super excited about that. I like the ratcheting ones too, just kind of same concept. Something different on the market there. The TMT one, I'm interested to see it because they're supposed to be coming out with a junctional addition to it. It's a junctional plate that's going to go on the bottom of it, so you can use it as a junctional tourniquet. And they're saying you can use it as a pelvic binder as well. So excited to see that. I just took the PHLS updates, and it was saying about pelvic binders are coming more and more. We're trying to push those more. So taking a tourniquet that could be used as a tourniquet, obviously, and then used as a junctional, and then used as a pelvic binder. Something that's going to give me three things for a price of, you're going to end up having two tourniquets, but you get the idea. I like that. So there again, same thing for me. I'm a cat tourniquet guy. Even when the tourniquet war's been going on for a couple of months now, I've been right in the middle of them. It seems like some of it on purpose, some of it not on purpose. I got called a cat tourniquet fanboy in a couple of the forums. I'm like, hey, whatever. I've been called worse. So I agree. I like seeing the new stuff come on the market. I don't think the perfect tourniquet's on the market yet. So giving more and more choices, absolutely. I think it's going to do good things for the market and it could push the industry forward.
Absolutely. Now, one concern I had about the ratcheting ones, and I don't know if you've probably had more contact with the companies than I have, but they can't disconnect. So there's no way to, if somebody's leg is trapped in heavy machinery and you have to in a cat tourniquet, you just take it out of the buckle, feed it around and tighten it on the leg. Same with the soft T wide. With those ones, I feel like that friction lock is a lot more cumbersome to take out the strap. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I agree. I don't think you can actually effectively disconnect it and connect it back. So I think if I was going to be teaching that at Stop the Bleed class, it's going to have to be loop it through. And I think that causes some issues, especially with really nasty, gross injuries. It may be a problem. So there again, understanding the tool and understanding the limitations of it and the advantages of it are important. And the one thing the ratchet, I think it binds a little bit too. So, but I think if you were in somewhere that's really muddy, I think it may be a more, I don't know. So I need to do more research and more education on my part for those, but I think they have their advantage and their disadvantages like anything else we see.
Absolutely.
Interesting stuff. So seeing as medical is gaining ground in the 2A community at the very least, what are your thoughts on the I don't know, the civilian medical space overall? Do you see any necessary improvements? Are there things that you have ideas for to do better in that space?
More classes. I think Stop the Bleed is a step in the right direction. I think your first aid courses through the American Red Cross and through like AHA, I think those are tired. I don't think they're teaching the relevant information at this point, and they're not, in my experience, they're not keeping up with some of the latest data. So I think when you start making medical cool. Everybody loves your defensive handgun courses, your CQB stuff. Make medical like that, or incorporate it into those classes where people feel cool when they go into it. They feel like this is a cool skill to have, something they can brag about, as opposed to, having a, American Red Cross certification that everybody's kind of like, I took it because I had to for my job. But not many people seek out those classes at this point. So I think more in-person classes, obviously I'm a fan of YouTube. I like that for supplementing knowledge and, podcasts like this. But in the end, and your intro says it, this doesn't replace real training. This doesn't replace hands-on training. This helps refresh your knowledge. So if you don't have a base knowledge going into it, you're not going to be useful in that situation, no matter what scenario you've cooked up in your head. It just doesn't happen like that.
Well said. Dietrich, any more questions?
No, I think that's it. I feel like we've questioned him to death. So no, I was super excited to get to know more about him and like his background, and it seems like we were pretty much on the same path of everything.
Yeah,
our thoughts on products and skills and stuff like that. So super excited to know that.
That is awesome. Have you had to do a crike in the field?
So I was in a granite mine about 2 miles underground, and we had a guy with airway compromise, and I tried. In Iowa we can't do surgical crikes, in Colorado now we can, but I tried to do a quick crike, or quick trach they call them. It's like a big needle, and it failed miserably. And then after reading some studies on the device after the fact, kind of learned it was a bad device. So it completely failed. Ended up having to manage the airway a different way. But that was my only experience with it. It's not something that's done a whole lot anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Military guys generally seem to be the ones who have done it in the past. But generally, when I just talk to like everyone else, ER doctors, RNs, like EMTs, medics, everything, I think it's like a dying art, even though it's a good thing if you can do it correctly.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I've had tons of training, but I've never done it in the field. So I'm like, knowing my luck, it's going to be like 2 a.m. in the rain in the back of a patrol car with blue lights flashing. I'm like, oh crap, I got to manage this guy's airway. So if we've done pig trays, we've done cadavers, we've done simulators, stuff like that. But there again, all the military guys, SF guys, are like, oh, once you get past the first cut, it's all downhill from there. I'm like, well, I agree, but so yeah, I think it's definitely one of those skills that's necessary, but definitely low frequency. Thank gosh, like we kind of crazy world we live in if we crike someone once a day.
That would be awful. Although you'd be really good at it, I bet.
That would be awesome. Like when I had a call recently where I wound packed and did a tourniquet all before the first arriving unit got on scene, and they were like, said I was smiling from ear to ear when they pulled up, and I was like, yes, I got to do it. This is fun.
Oh, that's awful, but also awesome. Okay, cool. So let's move into the after action report. Now, Dietrich, I'll let you go ahead and present it and all that, because man, this is a tough video for people to watch, I think. Now, Sam, did you see the one, motorcycle versus pole?
I did.
Good. Right. I kind of surprised you with this one, Sam. Sorry, I meant to send you a text on that and say, hey, we'll talk about it. But so this video popped up on Instagram and Facebook. I put it on my Instagram page and it got shut down immediately, got blocked. I did not get put in jail for it, thank gosh. But several other channels were able to get away with it. So good for them. But this guy, I think he's in Poland. Apparently a car pulls out in front of him. He's going down the sidewalk to try to avoid it and clips a pole. And at first glance, you're like, oh, he hits a pole. But then when you put it in slow motion, you see that he left his foot behind.
Yeah, you see him pop up.
And so then he's laying on the ground. He's holding his leg. A couple of bystanders run to help him. And then one guy's like, I'm going to go get some of my trunk, and like completely ignores the situation. He gets close enough to see, but it's like, oh, that's close enough. I'm going to go back and get my stuff out of my truck, my car.
Yeah, it was tough. There's a lot to learn there, but Sam, I'll go ahead and what were your thoughts on the whole thing?
I think that highlights mainly for civilians that we're not just talking about gunshots. We talked about tactical combat casualty care, but your march, your tourniquet application is applicable to all of these civilian issues, motorcycle wrecks, chainsaw accidents, things like that. So I think that's the main thing there. And I think like that's a perfect situation where a tourniquet is absolutely a necessity.
Yeah, without question. So for me, like one of the first things I noticed is two guys eventually run out of a building to the casualty, to the injured motorcycle rider. And one guy immediately, you can see he looks like he's doing the improvised tourniquet, and the other guy looks like he's going to direct traffic. And I thought, damn, that's pretty awesome. I wonder if they planned that ahead of time, because I thought it was pretty good, actually. Now, did you notice that, Dietrich?
Yeah, that was one of the things I talked about in my video I did on my YouTube channel, was that scene safety. I mean, this guy is still in the roadway and cars are just zipping by like, oh, I'm going to be late for coffee. And like, they're just zipping on by. So you're going to kneel down to try to do your improvised tourniquet, and you're going to be head down. Your head's not going to be up looking around for your surroundings. So having that scene safety awareness is huge, because you don't want to get hit by a car, get clocked by a mirror or something like that. So sending someone to push traffic away is super important there.
Yeah.
And to add on to that just a little bit, I think we've preached spinal immobilization to death. In something like that, where you're in immediate danger of getting hit by traffic, move the patient. Grab them, drag them a couple feet into the sidewalk, onto the driveway somewhere where you're not going to get hit, and then do your care, because you're not doing good for anybody if you get hit with that. And don't be afraid to move these people if you're in direct threat.
Great point.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with that. I'm like, what's worse, getting hit by another car or, possible paralysis if you move them a few feet?
God, yeah, that's my worst fear. Like I do not want to get hit by a car, like working the scene. So another thing that I point out on that video is the bystander effect.
Oh, yeah.
You see it. Like this guy's like, I do not want to get involved. And it's hopefully the people that listen to our podcast, watching our YouTube videos, are gonna be the ones who run to help. But the majority of the population doesn't want to get involved. They're like, this isn't my deal. I'm gonna stay in my lane, and they don't want to get involved. They just want someone else to do something, and they just stand there. And meanwhile, someone's dying in front of them because they're gonna go on Facebook Live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Dietrich, have you ever seen a belt tourniquet work?
I have not. I've been on a couple of scenes where they were using them, but there was still active blood flow still being used. So, I don't. I said in my video that I think at best it's probably a good pressure bandage. Using that. If you're going to improvise one, the webbing or material needs to be wide, 1.5 to 2 inches wide, and you got to have a windlass of some sort. I don't care if it's a screwdriver or whatever. I even said in my video that, someone I saw on Instagram use a tennis shoe as a windlass. I'm like, great, awesome. But you got to get that mechanical advantage, especially on the legs, as medium muscular as they are, to get that advantage to close down. But I've never seen an improvised tourniquet work.
Yep. And then you show the picture of the injury, which is, man, that blunt force, just that's tough. But it looks like there's a commercial tourniquet in it at that point. You can see a tan belt on above that, space blanket, because clearly he lost some blood and hypothermia was a concern. But do you know if they got the commercial tourniquet on like a civilian did that, or was it just a couple improvised belts until the first responders got there?
I don't know the answer to that. I would have. My assumption is, what assuming does, that EMS applied it once they got in there. But I know it's in Poland, so I don't know about their trauma education or trauma training for EMS there. So I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, but I mean, good application of the tourniquet. You can see how tight it is. It really bows in the tissue on the outside. So it was a good learning experience, I think, for a lot of people that watched it. So
exactly, and that's what we talked about. Having Plan A should be a good commercial tourniquet. Like I said, now with the new updated list, we've got more than 2 to choose from. Pick one, get some training. All 3 of us sitting right here now have ankle kits on us. So saying that you can't carry medical is being lazy. You can carry medical, and I get it. In the summertime, it's hot. I'm down in the south. It's humid. It's 1,000% humidity. But if I'm going somewhere, I'll still wear pants. just so I can carry that medical. That if I'm going somewhere like, God, this is a little, I'm worried about something, then absolutely I'll still wear pants. So it's easier for me to conceal my weapon, conceal my trauma kit. I just tough through wearing pants.
Yeah, no doubt. Totally get it. All right, cool. I think we've covered everything. But before we go, Sam, tell people where they can find you, where they can find your videos, keep up on social media, and any last words.
Well, thanks for having me on. If you're interested in my stuff, I'm on PrepMedic on YouTube. So it's one word, I think, on there. Quick search will find it. And then I'm also on Instagram. It's a little bit smaller on there, and I'm not doing as much educational stuff on Instagram. I'm just kind of posting pictures of my day and things I'm doing. So, yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on, and hope to do it again sometime.
Appreciate you coming on. You're doing good stuff on YouTube. So I would encourage everybody to go check out your videos. And you're posting once a week right now is your schedule. Yep. Saturdays, I believe. So we definitely would encourage people to go check out your channel.
All right. Awesome stuff. PrepMedic on YouTube. And don't forget, you can get almost all the stuff that we talk about on this show and everything else at medicalgearoutfitters.com and use coupon code Civilian Medical for 10% off. Dietrich, any final words?
Nope. I think that's it. So it's good times.
We'll talk to y'all next week.
Find us and subscribe at civmedical.com.